Now, moving to the U.S., why have several American Jewish organizations involved themselves in a death row murder case in Texas? Well, this story begins with a prison break of 7 inmates from a Texas jail 21 years ago, after which a police officer was shot dead during an encounter with the escapees. Dubbed the Texas Seven, they were all recaptured and later sentenced to death. And one of them, the now 44-year-old Randy Halpern, is Jewish. 5 already dead or executed. But this week, a Dallas judge stayed Halpern's verdict and granted his request for a new trial. The reason is that the original judge in his case, Vickers Cunningham, expressed anti-Semitic prejudice toward Halpern that violated his constitutional right to a fair trial. And signing on to an amicus brief in support of his appeal were the American Jewish Committee, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, Men of Reform Judaism, and the Union for Reform Judaism, along with more than 100 Jewish Texas lawyers. And joining us now is Stephen Portnoy, Executive Director of the Men of Reform Judaism, speaking to us from New York. And Stephen, thanks for joining us. I described the details of the case in general, but reading about it, the behavior of the judge in this case, Vickers Cunningham, maybe we could talk a little about that, is so shocking in this day and age, how he behaved and things he said, and not just about Jews.
Well, thank you for having me. You're certainly correct in that he said some, no other way to put it, just simply outrageous things. And he did not deny ever saying them. He referred to those effing Jews. He referred to Jews with a slur that begins with a K. Any other people that came into his courtroom, he would refer to some of the defendants as N-word Larry or N-word Paul. He refused to use their names. He used a very derogatory name for Mexicans that would come to in his courtroom. He basically said if they're walking into his courtroom, they knew they were going to be found guilty. So this case is a case that should never have happened. We're into the 21st century, and it's just beyond dispute that a trial conducted before a judge who admits to being racist and anti-Semitic shouldn't have taken place.
Right. So can I ask you, how did Men of Reform Judaism then get involved?
Okay, sure. The Religious Action Center Reform Judaism has a Commission on Social Action, and they are often asked to join cases as friends of the court. There is a review process that then takes place. It's submitted to a number of lawyers to decide whether or not they want to be a friend of the court. Men of Reform Judaism has a lawyer that sits on that committee. When the facts of the case were presented to us, we said we need to join. I mean, as Jews, we understand too well the effects of anti-Semitism, and in particular, in this case, anti-Semitism in the court prevented the defendant from having a fair trial.
Right. I just want to point out this defendant, Randy Halpern, was already serving a lengthy prison sentence for a case of child abuse, which was very severe. So it's not really so much about necessarily even getting him out of jail, but dealing with the example set by this one judge in which he may have imposed the death penalty, really more out of prejudice than the facts. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is clearly, from our point of view, we joined this not to decide any guilt or innocence. It was because we felt that there could be no fair trial. The Fourth Amendment requires a fair trial, have a fair tribunal. The Supreme Court has ruled on that, and it's just we felt that as part of our Jewish heritage, it was necessary to insist that everyone, not just in this case, but that all U.S. citizens are entitled to fair trials.
All right, and just again a reminder, this is not freeing this particular inmate. It's just going to see that he gets another trial on the specific charge of the death of this police officer. And I should note that even there, because there were 7 individuals involved and 1 officer was killed, it's not at all clear what the circumstances were in that case. But certainly the questions raised by this judge's behavior have to be addressed. I would like to thank you for joining us, Stephen Portnoy of Men in Reform Judaism here on I-24 News.
Thank you for having me.